places, you know.
We're just going to talk about sort of in public when you first come to Japan. We've heard that there is a lot of cultural ways of doing things in Japan, so we don't want to arrive in Japan and do things that are really foolish. What do you think is important for someone who first comes here?
Okay. Like I said before, I've been here 15 years, and Japan is a very welcoming country and a very, very safe country. It's a very clean country. I love living here. For starters, Japanese people are reluctant to break the ice. However, if you walk up and start talking to them, they're thrilled, and they will they enjoy English conversations, or enjoy the gaijin being foreigner interaction.
Okay.
So just because they're not talking to you, that's the cultural side of them, extending everyone a little bit of personal space. But if you said, "Hey guys, my name's Hemi," or "My name's Warwick," they would welcome that interaction. Trains, should we talk about trains?
Yeah.
You don't really need a car in Japan. Train system here is brilliant. It's safe, and it runs till about midnight every day. A couple of do's and don'ts, obviously, and you'll do this anyway, I'm sure. If people who have injuries, or older people carrying children, it's appropriate here to stand up and offer your seat to them. Cell phones, the use of cell phones whilst on trains is prohibited. They don't like it when you do that. And just to avoid, if you can, making too much noise. It is public space, and so if you're having a conversation in a normal tone, it's completely acceptable. But try not to get into a shouting match or to raise your voice too loudly. The train systems here, all of the train signs are in English. The announcements, many of them are in English. But honestly, you'll learn the train system within a couple of days' use, and it's absolutely brilliant. Shoes off, obviously, when you walk into any place. It's normally a shoes off culture here, you know that, but also when you walk outside, it's very inappropriate to wear bare feet outside, very inappropriate. And so make sure, indoors you've got your shoes off, outdoors you've got your shoes on. Exchanging business cards, for example, with potential employers or co-workers. Make sure you're standing when you do that. It's very appropriate to stand, hand the business card, and rather than just slip it into your wallet, have a look at it.
Should a teacher have a business card?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Really? Okay. Should someone bring some?
You can get them made here relatively inexpensively, and perhaps when people first come here, they won't know where they'll be working either. And if you are working for a company, then more than likely they'll be able to provide you with business cards.
Okay, and so how do Japanese feel about foreigners in general? Are they sick and tired of foreigners being around, or?
No, they're not. As a matter of fact, it's easy to form the wrong impression when you first get here, thinking that they are standoff towards foreigners, but all they're doing is respecting your space. You know, with 140 million people in a country as small as New Zealand, they're taught to respect each other's space. But they're very, very welcoming, very funny people. The more you get to know them, the more you get to know their language. They're hilarious, and they love to laugh, and they love to party, and they love to play. You know, a lot of the cultures now, the music, for example, is driven off the media. They go and watch the American movies, and all of a sudden the hip-hop comes big in Japan, and this fashion that's popular overseas becomes very, very hip over here as well. Your question was, are they receptive of foreigners? Absolutely. One thing I know about Japan is if you're not looking for trouble in Japan, you won't find any. People are very, very welcoming, very receptive of foreigners coming here.
Okay, it's good to hear. Is there any sort of faux pas, bad behaviour that one could do culturally? You mentioned the shoes and bare feet. Things like blowing your nose, or any odd things that foreigners can do.
There are as many cultural etiquette that you need to be aware of depending on what you're doing, driving for example, eating for example, so the list is endless.
Yes. I know you mentioned that one about finishing your rice.
Yeah, okay, great example. When you're eating for example, get used to eating with chopsticks. Most restaurants won't have a fork to give you, even if you asked for one, to be honest. If rice, it's very inappropriate to leave rice remaining. So if you've got a meal and there's several dishes, make sure you finish the rice. You can leave the other, but make sure you eat the rice first. The other thing you want to be careful of is a lot of foreigners come here and make the sad mistake of eating rice with chopsticks and then sticking their chopsticks into the rice. That's very inappropriate here. There's only one time that people will do that in Japan, and that's at a funeral, and they will be offended with that if you've been here a while, because you should know better now. So when you come here, so not to offend people, that's one thing I'd watch out for. Just don't stick your chopsticks into the rice. It's really inappropriate. The other thing is, this is going pretty deep, but for example, if you're sharing food with people, and a lot of times you'll sit around a meal and there'll be different dishes inside, and someone will say pass the chicken, for example. Well, if you pick the chicken up with your chopstick and pass it to another person, you need to put it on their plate. Never receive food chopstick to chopstick. That's very inappropriate here in Japan. And there's a very deep reason why, and the reason is the only time they pass anything chopstick to chopstick in Japan is after the cremation of a loved one. The bones and the remains are passed from the cremator to the family, chopstick to chopstick. It's the only time. But again, the longer you live here, the more they expect you to be aware of those cultural differences.
Okay.
One more thing.
Yes.
If you're with a group and, for example, a work party, and you're all the waitress or the waiter has dropped off beers or drinks or whatever it be, beverages of any description, don't drink yours until the most senior person at the table picks us up. He will more than likely, in every case, propose a toast. So don't just grab it, okay, great, it's been a hot day, and knock it back. You need to wait until the most senior person at that table receives his, he'll propose a toast, or if he doesn't and starts drinking it, that's your sign that you can start drinking it. Be aware of that.
All right, excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.